I guess from that, it's the idea that you said your friend expected something of you or had a high expectation of you. Was there an experience of the opposite of that, where people expected less of you because of the difficulties that you had then, do you think?
Yeah, it's the rest of my life, Dr. DeLima. That was the rest of my life. The rest of my life was that I was so pathetic on so many fronts. Not being able to keep a job because of anxiety, not being able to pay my bills because of anxiety, not being able to maintain a normal and healthy weight and be any kind of productive member of society because I was struggling with this and I didn't know how to go about it. I was just eventually let off the hook so many times that nobody really expected a damn thing from me.
Wow.
And that's the worst thing, when no one expects anything from you, because at the same time, when nobody expects anything from you, they don't listen to you when you have anything decent to say either.
And one of the things that you said, so you've described there your anxiety around kind of physical exercise and about physically having a heart attack. One of the things that you've also talked about, and you mentioned earlier, was a lot of your anxiety was driven by embarrassment or the fear of embarrassment. So like a socially driven anxiety, which I suspect a lot of young people listening to this might relate to. So can you talk about the discomfort around, because embarrassment is an uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? No, nobody likes that, but when it becomes so central that you must avoid any embarrassing situation, then you start to limit your life. Can you tell us a little bit about how that impacted on you and how you challenged that?
I absolutely can, and it all ties together, right? So not only was I afraid of having a heart attack and dying, I was afraid of having a heart attack and dying in public, which was probably the worst part about it. All right? I never wanted anyone to know, like, the thought of being, let's say, 32, 33 years old, being as overweight as I was, having a heart attack and dying in public, and people just saying, yep, look at that fat guy who died in public. The embarrassment, or even fainting in public. Yeah. All that, don't faint. And then you'd be like, then what does don't faint bring on? It brings on a dizzy spell. And then you get dizzy, and then you get worked up, and then 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, that didn't happen. It never happens, okay? It's not going to happen. When you're having a panic attack, your chances of passing out are very, very small because your heart rate's up, okay? It's not falling, right? So there's so many contradictions that you're having with anxiety, but yes, public embarrassment. So I was very afraid to vomit in public. That I went through that for about 5 to 7 years. To pass out in public, to have people pay attention to me and to have to care for me in public was a very big fear of mine. It all tied together. So it was kind of like that. It's exactly what they teach in CBT therapy, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy, right? The thought loops. And it goes from, okay, do I have a stomach ache, to, or is my left arm tingling, or is my fingers tingling? Why are my fingers tingling? Ooh, that's a symptom. Because you'll eventually, I've gotten into so many rabbit holes on the internet about what's going on with me prior when the internet came out. So, I knew the symptom of everything, right? So you're thinking of, that's a symptom of this. Oh, am I having this? Oh my God, what if that happens here? What if it happens in front of my parents? What if it happens in front of my spouse? What if it happens in front of my kids, God forbid? And just that spiral loop. So you got to learn how to stop that really low. And I don't know if you know this gentleman or not, but his book, the Dare book, Barry McDonough. Do you guys know Barry McDonough?
I've heard you talk about the book, but I haven't read the book.
And the basis of his book, Dare, is so simple, but it's so complex at the same time, right? And one of the great things that his book taught me was, so what? That simple. So what? So what if you pass out in public? So what if you throw up at a table? So what if you tell your colleagues or somebody who's sitting around a dinner table with you that you're too anxious to eat right now? So what? And once you could figure that part out, so it goes into the first thing, is I'm uncomfortable from the beginning because I'm already anticipating anxiety, right? So seek discomfort. Go to that table. Sit down at that table with those people and say, I am already comfortable. Let them know. Get that out of the way. Look, I'm pretty anxious today. Bear with me. I'll be fine. Just act normal. I'm okay. Trust me. Just if I'm not maybe following the conversation or something, it's just something with me. And if you're in the middle of your dinner and you find that your throat's closing up or you're having any other symptoms that come with that, so what? You know what's going to happen. The answer is nothing. Nothing's going to happen except for you're going to scare the bejesus out of yourself like you've done a million times. But it's not real. It's your brain playing tricks on you because you're thinking about it over and over and over. So seek the discomfort. Sit there and eat that salad or that meal or whatever is in front of you and eat it. You're going to be fine.
This thing about being real and kind of saying it's not real. And I suppose I wonder that if someone's looking at someone freaking out at the dinner table about having a heart attack and may say it's not going to happen, so what if you do freak out, it almost feels like it's not supportive in a way, because actually to that person who's sitting there on the dinner table it feels so real, so and that's why I asked whether the so what, if it's it feels easy to say so what when you're looking at someone experiencing anxiety, but when you're feeling it might be really hard to say so what,
It's really difficult for me to comment on that because that kind of situation has never happened to me, so I've never been in the moment where I'm having an anxiety issue and then I told somebody and they kind of like in a compassionate way said like, because the way that you deal with somebody with anxiety is all about context, right? Because if you and I were sitting at a restaurant and you said, "Hey, Jason, I'm having a panic attack," and I went, "So what?" You would take it much differently than if I said, "Hey, so what? You're okay." There's a million, the context and the way that you go about talking to somebody about it it's mind blowing because like I've spoken to a lot of people now through social media and who have dealt with anxiety, and I get DMs all of the time about people, hey, I try to talk to my parents about it, and the same old line that everybody gets, well, get over it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the worst way that, telling somebody to get over it, in my opinion, in any context, is way worse than saying, hey, Dr. Claire, so what?
Yeah.
Kind of like, think about it, right? So what? Oh, so what? Like, because the way that Barry explains in his book, so what, man? Yeah, like, so what?
Yeah.
So what? You're not going to put it in the front page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
Oh, so what?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I said about the restaurant, hey, so what? Just like sit there and be normal. Like, no, just back off. Or, so it's the way that you say it is the way that the context behind it is key.
Yeah.
Very, very key
Yeah.
when you're doing it.
And it is almost a question that I think, as you say, it's the nuance or the intonation, how you ask it, and the intention behind it. So I think if you're asking it to yourself, you're actually challenging the thought that you're having with that question, aren't you? So the so what? And I think it's a great question, to go back to the question I asked you about the social anxiety and the embarrassment, because you can really dig down into that one with the so what question. It's like, so if I pass out or if I throw up in this restaurant, that would be so catastrophic. We think, well, so what? What would happen? Well, all these people would look at me and notice. Well, so what? Well, they would think, what an idiot. Well, so, and it kind of digs down into the you get to the core of where the anxiety is coming from then, don't you? Because it's this idea that I'm so focused on what people think of me, and then you get to the, so what? Why does that matter? Why does it matter what people in a restaurant? And actually, and it gets to they probably won't think of you. They'll go, oh dear, that man passed out. And then they'll get on with their own lives. Yeah, and it kind of gets... Yeah.
Absolutely. 99.9% of the people in that restaurant are going to come over to help you.
Yeah.
They're not going to come over and point and
No,
laugh
no.
at you, but that's what you
Yeah.
think. And it would be, far more embarrassing to have, but to me also it was like, I don't need special attention. I'm okay or whatever, right? But once you can get that so what in your mind, it just blows doors open for
Yeah.
you in
Yes.
life, in my opinion, especially when you're talking to people who do suffer from generalized anxiety disorder or anything like that, right? So somebody who hits that, so what? I could go to the restaurant now because so what? Or now I could start my own podcast. So what? Or now I could write books about what I've been feeling. So what? What? It doesn't matter, right? And it just keeps taking you out of your comfort zone further and further, and that anxiety is going down and down and down because you could put in your brain, I don't need to be comfortable all the time, and even if I am uncomfortable, so what? Now you're at point 3. Now you're really getting somewhere.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yeah. So this idea of the work that you've done, and it's kind of been 3 years with those baby steps, experimenting on yourself, finding what works for you, that so what question. And it sounds like it's not just been about overcoming the anxiety, it's in doing that and that so what question. I think you said it's blown the doors open for all sorts of other things. It's like, well, now if I can do this, it's almost I can do anything. It's just like, yeah, okay, so what next? I'll try that. It sounds like it's really kind of gives you real freedom and liberty to open up all sorts of opportunities that were probably closed.
I think those two words, so what, doesn't even have to just manifest to people who with anxiety. I think that can manifest to anybody, right?
Yeah.
So what? So what? I want to try, to learn a new language, or I want to learn how to, so, okay, I'm trying to learn a new language, and for the first 6 weeks I struggle through it. So what? So does everybody else. Keep going. Learn a language. You'll figure it out. So I want to learn how to play the piano. I want to learn how to play the violin. I want to learn how to play soccer. I want to learn anything. So what? I stink in the beginning. So does everybody else. So what? Keep going.
Yeah.
You know what? So what? So what? I stink for my whole life. I enjoy it. So what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just put it at the end of almost anything.
It's liberating, isn't it?
It is.
It is. It very much is.
Another thing that I've heard you talk about is the idea of acceptance. I think in one of your really early podcasts when you talked about, I can't remember how many things, was it 6 things to do to overcome anxiety? And I think acceptance was it 4? And I think acceptance, was it the first one? Was it
Acceptance is the most important, just like any other addiction, because anxiety is an addiction,
Yes, yeah. And I thought what was interesting when you talked about that idea of acceptance, exactly what you've said there, you first of all have to accept you have a problem. And then you looked at some different definitions of acceptance, and you honed in on the one that had the word willingness in, that it's not a passive acceptance. It's a willingness to accept that to acknowledge that you have the problem, but then to move forward with it. And it's linked to this comfort thing as well, isn't it? Saying that I am willing to accept the discomfort and yet move forward. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
It's really difficult to wake up every single morning and say, not again, right? Oh no, it's here. It's not going away. Until you say, now it all comes back, but I am an anxious person. I do have this anxiety issue or whatever it is going on with me. And you may not know why or for what reason or anything, because there's so many days that you wake up and I've spoken to my wife and she go, I'm anxious today. Why? I don't know. And you really don't know, okay? You just are. So you just say, instead of saying, well, I got to fight this anxiety with everything I got. The thing is, and the most uncomfortable thing, but the easiest thing to do is say, yep, but I'm just going to keep going. And what's the bottom line of that? I'm anxious today. So what?
Yeah.
Right?
Back to say
So what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what? You was anxious yesterday, you're going to probably be anxious tomorrow. So what? And once you could accept, yep, I'm anxious, stop trying to figure out why, stop trying to be anxious, or stop trying to not be anxious, because you can't stop anxiety. You can't stop it. If you could stop it, you would stop it, right? You can't. The more you try to stop it, the worse it gets. So once you accept it, you've ended at a point. Go ahead, Dr. DeLima.
Yeah. I suppose, and it's interesting that you picked it as the first step, and that to me shows how crucial and important it is, I guess, because you can't take actions to support yourself and face challenge if you first haven't accepted it. And I think that came out very clearly, and I think sometimes, maybe in the work that is happening at the moment to support young people with anxiety, that maybe there is a tendency to try and get rid of it, or try to have it not be there anymore. And what you're saying is very different. It's saying, actually, let anxiety eat with me at the dinner table every day. It's there. I accept that it's here, and I'm still going to go out and do what's important to me and take actions that help me. I'm not going to spend my life thinking about how to get it away from the dinner table, to use a metaphor. But that's powerful. That's powerful.
Dr. Claire Weeks. That's all Dr. Claire Weeks' acceptance of anxiety is her books. Unfortunately, she passed away, within the last 2 or 3 years, I believe. But that's her. Yeah, and look, you don't come up with this stuff yourself. You have to, because if you could come up with it yourself, nobody would write any books, or nobody would do any projects like you guys are doing or I'm doing, right? So you had to learn from somebody. And you learn from yourself, but you also have to learn from others who have been through it.
Yeah.
So if you don't accept that, yes, okay, I am in an anxious state, I suffer from this thing called anxiety or whatever it is that you've got, start there. I have it. Okay, what do we do? Okay, so what happens? What makes my anxiety worse? Well, what makes my anxiety worse is I go to school, or I deal with my friends, or I do this, or I do that. Okay. So baby steps. Let's work on that. Let's go to school and try to have 1 minute of clarity, 2 minutes of clarity, 3, 5, 10, an hour. And it takes weeks and weeks and weeks, and school may be over by the time you get to an hour. But so what? 1 hour out of that day, out of that 7-hour day, is way better than the 8 hours of hell that you had before, right?
It's like you got to take the long road. It's a journey, isn't it? It's not something that's going to change overnight. It's the long road.
There is no short road. There isn't one. There is not one. I can't express that to kids or anybody else. Anybody else that suffers from this. I don't even know if the road ends. I can't sit here in front of you guys and tell you that the road ends. I don't know. But I know that I do know for certain that the road gets wider and the trees get nicer on it, and the world gets to be a lot better place once you stop questioning everything that's wrong with you, or stop worrying about if you're sick or if you're not. You can't control any of that. So don't worry about the things you can't control, and just do your best and do things that are difficult.
Some of the listeners might be experiencing anxiety themselves, or they might not feel anxiety too much, but they might have friends that feel it. Yeah. And what stood out really powerfully to me was your friend who approached you and noticed what was going on for you and suggested an action that could help you. So I just wondered, for those listening that have friends or family members that might be experiencing these difficulties, what would you say to them?
Okay.
Yeah.
When you know that something's wrong with it, especially your children or a really good friend or a cousin or somebody that you love, right? Context matters, but you also have to understand that if that person's coming to you with something very serious, like, hey, your well-being, or context matters, and say that to them in a way where you know that they could handle it, or they might get pissed off at you, but they'd also pay attention. Don't be afraid to piss your friends off, especially the ones that love you and you love them. Okay? If you really care for them, you won't be worried about. And again, so what if you piss them off? If you save a part of them, or if you help them in some way, shape, or form, right? So what? So when my friend came up to me with what he said to me, he was kind of giving me a so what, or he was telling me, I know you're better than this. Let me try to show you with a kick in the pants. You know what I mean? So tough love works a lot better than empathetic love or sympathetic love, in my opinion. Don't be afraid to be a little tough. I think this world needs to be a lot more tougher than it is, right? So, but do it in a way that comes with caring, not with, any kind of way that you think they might be making fun of them or something along those lines, right? So just say like he did to me. Look, I know you're not going to like me that day, but you're going to love me the next day. Help anybody.
When we talk about tough love there, Jay, you're talking about, and as you said, the context is everything. Is it coming from somebody that you know has your best interests at heart? Because you think if it's somebody that you know loves you and cares about you, then you're more likely then there is going to be love in it, isn't it? It's the tough with the love, and also what you described it then with your friend. It's also somebody having that belief in you that I believe that you can do something about this. So it's not so that, because what your friend did with you was challenge you to say, actually, this is going to be tough, but you're going to do it. And then and you will be somebody who can carry on doing this. So it's also somebody who you trust has the best of intentions for you. So they're not saying anything to try and bring you down, to try and belittle you. You know that actually they want you to succeed. And also they believe you can succeed. And those two, if tough love is done with both of those, then you're much more likely to respond to that idea, I would guess.
And, maybe my scenario was a very special circumstance, but I don't know if it is, because I think everybody out there has at least one friend like that. The other part about it was the mutual respect that I didn't want to let my friend down. If he believed in me like that, I didn't want to let him down. So that was the other part of it. Like, somebody expects something out of me. Wow. All right. I don't want to let this person down. Let's show up, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not up to your standards or what you think is good, again, kids, so what? So what?
Yeah. I guess from that, it's the idea that you said your friend expected something of you or had a high expectation of you. Was there an experience of the opposite of that, where people expected less of you because of the difficulties that you had then, do you think?
Yeah, it's the rest of my life, Dr. DeLima. That was the rest of my life. The rest of my life was that I was so pathetic on so many fronts. Not being able to keep a job because of anxiety, not being able to pay my bills because of anxiety, not being able to maintain a normal and healthy weight and be any kind of productive member of society because I was struggling with this and I didn't know how to go about it. I was just eventually let off the hook so many times that nobody really expected a damn thing from me.
Wow.
And that's the worst thing, when no one expects anything from you, because at the same time, when nobody expects anything from you, they don't listen to you when you have anything decent to say either. Okay? So once you get somebody who wants a little responsibility out of you, or knows that you can handle the responsibility out of you, you'll be like, all right, somebody's looking for something from me. And maybe it's just your effort, maybe it's just your friendship, maybe it's just a workout. Whatever. I don't want to let that person down. And then once you say, I can fulfill what that person's looking for from me, that can just spill into so much more. Like, here's the thing, you don't know where the starting point's going to come from, but it's going to come from somewhere. And don't be on the look for it. Just be on the look for, accepting what you've got, being grateful for what you do really have, and know that once you start putting the work in and once you start really paying attention to what works best for you in your life, and I'm not saying dangerous ways, or I'm not saying, hey, what's best for me right now is sitting in front of the TV and playing video games for 15 hours a day. That will absolutely positively make you depressed, okay? There's no two ways about this. Accept it and then challenge yourself. Get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. That's what I would say to. I would say that to a 5-year-old. I would say that to anyone. I would say that to anyone. Accept that you're going to be uncomfortable most of the time, and then get really uncomfortable, and watch. You're going to be all right.
Well, thank you so much, Jay, for coming on Not the Easy Way today. We've loved talking to you. Really enjoyed listening to your podcast over the past couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, really, from the bottom of my heart, for having me on this opportunity. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope that we can help a few people.
Oh,
No, thank you,
Jay.
It's been an absolute
Thank you
pleasure.
for coming on.
Now we're going to leave you with a few questions to discuss amongst yourselves. If you were to say to yourself, so what, when you're feeling anxiety or worry, what might happen? Could it blow doors open?
Why is acceptance the first and the most important step in dealing with anxiety?
And the final question is, Jay's friend told him, I know you're better than this. Is that a helpful thing to say to a friend? Thank you for listening to Not the Easy Way, and please look forward to another episode coming out very soon. Take care.